Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the show where a real statistics professor
and his cousin
and his friend Jake
gives you sports betting tips. I'm your host, Professor Sides, and for the latest updates, information, and picks, you can follow me on Twitter at Professor Sides. You can follow my cousin Jared on Twitter at Cousin Jared, and my friend Jake on Twitter at myfriend_Jake. Today's college football 2022 season preview episode is going to cover the Big Ten, the Pac-12, and the Mountain West. I feel nervous getting back on college football. I don't know about you guys. It's like a whole different world. We did college basketball for so long and baseball for so long, and now we're talking football. It's like, oh yeah, we're back to the football thing again.
Yeah, I don't know how it's this time of year already. I've got my countdown clock on my phone, 47 days, 3 hours, 4 minutes, 34 seconds. As of the recording of this episode, it'll be under 47 days by the time you watch this. It can't get here fast enough.
Is that week 0 or week 1?
That is week 0. This is a very technical podcast. That is week 0. So not most teams won't be playing then. Only a handful, but it still counts. It's all that matters.
I know. I'm a little jittery. I like it. My hands are shaking. I can't wait to get into the football. I like it.
Yeah.
One of the better ones.
All right, well, this is the part of the show where usually I would say, in case you're new here, I built a mathematical model that predicts what the spread should be for every FBS college football game. Of course, we're not talking about games right now. We're talking about season preview. But when the season comes, just so you're aware, I will have each team's power rating and a graded A, B, or C pick for every game that's played during the week, available on a Google Sheet, just like we do for other sports. That'll be linked in the show's description when we get to those weeks. But otherwise, again, we're going to get right to the action of the season previews. But before we do that, some reminders. Please hit that like button if you're on YouTube. Also, if you aren't yet, please consider subscribing or following. It's free. And the only way, assuming you turn notifications on to ensure you don't miss any of the college basketball, MLB, or college football content that this channel provides. Share with a friend if you know others in the game. Hit us up on Twitter or drop a comment if you're on YouTube. We love those and try to respond to as many as we can. We are going to start off with the Big Ten Conference. The Big Ten, that was 10, and then it was 11, and then it was 12, and now it's going to be, I don't even know how many it's
nationwide.
Nationwide.
24.
Who knows? I feel like, probably, when you watch this episode, depending on how soon you watch this versus when we record it, like nothing has changed. But I mean, anything is kind of possible these days. Like by the time you hear this, like they might have gotten more than just USC and UCLA in the year's future. Who knows what this?
Yeah, there's a reason that we did the Pac-12 and the Big Ten preview together.
Exactly. Of course, none of that matters this year, right? Those two teams will still be in the Pac-12 for this year. The Pac-12 maybe is falling apart. Who knows? But for this year, it stays the same. So the Big Ten will, still in two divisions for now. It feels every year like we have just a bloodbath in the East with those teams. And then just in the West, usually maybe a team or two that pops up. Cousin Jared, I'll turn the floor over to you. Let us know, do you think it's going to be the same? What are you looking for? What do you got for us?
Well, the way that I would start the conversation about the Big Ten is that we don't need to talk about the Big Ten East. Ohio State's going to be really good. Michigan's going to be pretty good. I'm going to guess that Rutgers and Indiana aren't going to be very good. So you'll hear plenty about the Big Ten East teams later on in the season. So here on this podcast, we're going to get down into the nooks and crannies, right? So let's talk about the Big Ten West. Let's roll up our sleeves and just run some people over 3 yards in the cloud of dust in the Big Ten West here.
Definitely going to be some of that.
Yeah. So I think we can all admit that Wisconsin and Iowa are kind of the top teams. Definitely, I think probably one of those two teams are most likely to win the division.
Well, the big question there is, does either team have a quarterback?
Yeah,
literally.
I don't know if I can admit that.
Literally, my next sentence I have here. But they have fairly low ceilings unless they fix their offensive woes. Come on, we're reading from the same script here, guys. I think they're good teams, but they're flawed. Yeah. The same thing I think you could say about Northwestern and Illinois. I think they're definitely the bottom two teams. They're flawed. They're probably going to win a game they shouldn't, but they're definitely going to lose a game they shouldn't. I think they're probably going to find themselves at the bottom of the standings towards the end of the year. So I think that there are three teams in the Big Ten West that will kind of, determine how the Big Ten West stacks up this year. And those three teams are Nebraska, Purdue, and Minnesota. But let me just start off here with Nebraska. If you want to hear my analysis on Nebraska, you're going to have to stick around for our Week 0 show, where we will cover in depth the Nebraska Cornhusker season in their opening game against Northwestern in Dublin, Ireland. Because we've done it one time. I covered Nebraska week 0 last year on our very first show.
Very first show ever, yeah.
So we did it one time. It's tradition. I will cover Nebraska week 0 every year from now on. So if you want to hear me talk about Nebraska, gotta wait till week 0.
And I didn't even ask you for the plug for that, but that was beautiful. It was perfect. I love it.
I've listened to enough podcasts in my life to know a tease. Okay. So the second team that I think has the potential, the variability to maybe finish towards the top of the division, or they could finish towards the bottom, is Purdue. So, I'm a pretty dedicated football fan. Could I have told you that Purdue won 8 regular season games last year and 9, including their bowl game? Don't think that I could have told you that.
Don't remind me of the bowl game.
Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that's something I wanted to mention here too. Their 8 regular season wins, 9 including their bowl game, they were big wins. They won at Iowa, beat Michigan State, who was ranked number 3 or 5, something like that at the time, at home.
Way too high, but they were still a good team.
Yes. Well, according to the model was all on Michigan State last year.
Hey, the model's always talking about value, right? The model never said Michigan State was the 3rd best team in the country. It just said they were being disrespected,
Touche. Yeah. So, and then they beat a rolling Tennessee team there at the end of the season in the bowl game.
I think that needs an asterisk because that touchdown I got taken away was not fair.
See, Jake, you're going to fit right in with this college football because I am super petty and I will remember a bad loss for the rest of my life. So you're going to do great here.
I just remember that game being bonkers. That's really all I remember. I don't even remember the specifics, just being like, what is happening this game? It was just And they also gave Notre Dame all they could handle earlier in the season. Mm-hmm. But with Purdue, I think their offense has reached the point where it's consistent enough that they can kind of handle their turnover year to year. They kind of remind me a little bit of those Jeff Brom teams there at Purdue, kind of remind me a little bit of the Mike Leach offenses, where you can kind of just plug in a lot of these people. As long as you got a decent quarterback, you can plug in these offensive players and they're going to be able to score some points. They've lost some receivers, but I think they'll be able to replace that production type of offense. They had 2 pretty good ones, right?
Really, yeah, 2 really, really good ones.
2 amazing ones.
Yeah, and then they had a really good defensive end too. But the problem is defensively with Purdue, their weakness is the pass rush. But you're playing in the Big Ten West, so who are you going to rush? I mean, if there is a weakness that you want to have, a pass rush is not a too bad one to have in that division. So, in my opinion, this Purdue team has the ability to beat anybody in this division because they can put up some points, and the teams at the top can definitely struggle doing that every once in a while. So that's one reason I think Purdue's going to make a big difference.
The top of the Big Ten West.
Yeah. Top of the Big Ten West.
And they've proven it last year that they can go to somebody's house and make them real worried. And again, because Aiden O'Connell seems to just, I don't know, he's one of my favorite guys to watch. Just kind of incredible what he does.
He's not going to be scared going on the road in some of those tough environments for sure. So that brings me to my third team here that I think is going to affect the Big Ten West. And this one is where I'm going to lose some of you. And that's okay. I'm going to convince you here. That team is Minnesota. And I know what some of you are thinking. Is this the same Minnesota team that lost to Bowling Green at home while only scoring 10 points? And the answer is yes. Yes, this is that same team. Somehow, that team won. Go ahead.
No, that's what I was about to say. I feel like Minnesota had that loss, and everyone was like, this team's never going to win again. And then they started playing well and winning a bunch of games. And then I don't remember who it was, but I remember last year, after they were playing really well, then they had another inexplicable loss towards the end of the season.
Mm-hmm. Illinois.
I feel like Minnesota was like, they're horrible. No, wait, they're actually good. No, wait, now they're still bad again. I don't know what this team is.
Yep, reading from the same sheet of paper here. They somehow beat Wisconsin and Purdue last year, but lost to Illinois and Bowling Green.
Yeah.
So, but the reason I think this team's going to turn around is they're good defensively. All of their problems last year were on the offensive side of the ball. And Tanner Morgan was at quarterback was bad last year. I don't think there's any hesitation in saying that. He only threw for 2,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. But you know what can fix that? Let's bring back his offensive coordinator from 2019, where he threw for over 3,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. And that's exactly what PJ Fleck did in the offseason. So I think bringing back that offense coordinator from a couple of years ago, that'll make Morgan feel confident. They've got a lot of experience coming back as skill position players. And again, if their defense is really good, if you can put up a reasonable number of points, you have a great chance to win a lot of these games. So that's why I think Minnesota is going to stick around.
biggest issue, I think, is the fact they only bring in one offensive line or starter back with that offense, and that's going to hurt when you got a quarterback that's so feast or famine in Morgan. You go from 30 to 10 is kind of but if the O-line gets it in if the O-line gets it ready, then I think he'll have a great year.
Yep. So if you're watching this show and you missed all of our college football shows last year, I think you're seeing right now the exact sort of thing that happens during the season. I build the model, I do the math, I try to find value about the all that sort of stuff. Because Jared knows college. I love college football. I watch a lot of college football. I've got 3 or 4 screens up at a time, so I watch a lot. But because I watch so much, I don't know the X's and O's quite like Cousin Jared. He's my guy here for that insight. I need you to tell me the story because I have no idea what happened. How was he an offensive coordinator back in 2019 and then left and then came back? Like, what's his story?
I would love to tell you exactly who he went to, but he went somewhere in 2020, did not have a good season. It was let go from that job, spent 2021 as an analyst at West Virginia, I believe. And then obviously after the bad season last year, Flex said, hey, we should get back together because we had a good thing going.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's optimistic right there for sure. Yeah. That seems like it bodes well.
Especially with their same quarterback back. I think that's a smart move by Fleck.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing I forgot to mention with Purdue that I thought was huge for them for like tiebreaker purposes out in the West is they don't get Ohio State and Michigan this year. Their crossover battles is huge. Like the fact that they get to miss those 2 guys for the extra 2 losses off their schedule is probably pretty nice.
Yep, because those are 2 guaranteed losses, I'm going to guess.
Yeah.
Well, and Minnesota does as well. Minnesota doesn't have Ohio State or Michigan.
So
and then looks like Nebraska does not get Ohio State, and that's the next team we wanted to talk about here. I thought it was interesting. You talked about these 3 teams. Their win totals for all 3 of them are 7.5. There's different amounts of juice on each one of them, and you made the comment that you might lose some people here, but Minnesota actually has the most juice on the over of the 3. So the implied win total from the sports book here is that Minnesota is actually going to win the most games of the 3. Now, it's probably rounding error, but all 3 of these teams with win totals at 7.5, I think when you say they're the 3 that are kind of could make some noise, I think the sports books would agree with you with where they've hung these numbers.
Yeah, and Minnesota's non-conference schedule, I think that may be the juice is their non-conference schedule is not the toughest that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, but who, I mean, which one of these teams does play a good non-conference schedule? Like Purdue has Indiana State, obviously a win, at Syracuse. Now, Syracuse is a very tough place to play with that travel. So, I mean, that's not going to be an automatic win. Syracuse is one of the few places that I would say has a surprisingly large home field advantage in college football. But then Florida Atlantic, isn't scaring anybody. Minnesota, like you said, New Mexico State, Western Illinois, and then at home against Colorado. That's not really scary either. Nebraska gets North Dakota, Georgia Southern. The difference that Nebraska gets that kind of a likely loss at home against Oklahoma. They will be decent underdogs in that game. I have to imagine 10 to 14 points, at least double-digit underdogs in that game. But still projected to win 7.5 games. So that kind of tells me, I guess the books think that Nebraska might be slightly better with a slightly harder schedule. But it's all kind of rounding error at this point with how that shuffles. And Nebraska going to play Michigan, maybe just a tougher overall schedule.
I think this Nebraska team is going to take a step here because Scott Frost is in desperation mode, so he's going all out for this because I think he's about to lose the job if he doesn't do well this year. Great hire with Whipple from Pittsburgh. That was to run that offense. Then bringing in the Texas quarterback, Casey Thompson, and got rid of Adrian Martinez, which a few times that not bringing back the quarterback you had last year is going to be a plus because he was a walking turnover and bad decision.
The turnover machine cashed in, baby.
Oh, I can't remember that. I can't remember which game it was, but he decided
all of them. The answer is all of them.
No, the one he decided to run the ball, and they had the game won and fumbles it, and then that's how they lost the game. It was just
sounds like all of them. No, all of them. I think most of them it was an interception. To be fair, the fumble was a nice twist.
Just gotta mix it up with it. But I mean, one of the few times that getting rid of somebody is an actual decision.
I think the point you're getting at. I think a change for everybody there is going to be beneficial. I think it's going to be good for him. I think it's going to be good for Nebraska. So,
and I think it'll be good for Kansas State as well. I think he's a talented kid. He just, it just wasn't working. And I kind of feel like the change of scenery thing in general is a little overrated. I think we kind of make too much of that most of the time, but sometimes when you're talking about 20-year-old kids, sometimes it can do wonders, especially talking about different coaching schemes. I mean, this is like you said, a perfect change of scenery for everyone involved.
And I'm not sure where he's from, so he might be going back closer to home or something like that too. That might make him more comfortable, help him out. But I mean, in last year they lost 7 games by 1 score or less. 8 if you want to throw in the Illinois game where they lost by 8. So you're right there. So you can't have that many go bad. Like it would level out, you would think, at some point.
I think my thing on Nebraska here, and Cousin Jared will have a whole breakdown in the week 0 episode apparently.
Yeah.
My question mark about Nebraska is how much of this losing close games is, the next step to you are bad, you lose close, you win big, right? That's the trajectory that football teams want to take. And how much of this losing close games is just not disciplined coaching, not good decision making. And part of that falls on Martinez, right? And now that he's gone, that could help. And Casey Thompson was a guy who helped out Texas a lot when he came in, kind of steadied the ship there a little bit. So maybe that helps, but I wonder how much of that's coaching. I wonder how much of that's, and I really don't know the answer. I feel like Nebraska to me is a team that season's going to go one of 2 ways. It's either they're going to take that step forward and they lost all those close games and now they're going to be able to win them and they're a 9 or 10 win team, or the wheels are just going to fall off because this is just kind of who they are. And last year they kind of kept fighting all season and losing close all season, which was very impressive. But you just wonder, like, can they do that again? Like, if it starts happening again, are the wheels just going to come off? And I feel like their season just diverged. It goes one of 2 ways. I will say I have on Mrs. Professor's family side, we have some cousins who are Nebraska fans. And I'll tell you, they are behind Scott Frost. I feel like at least that family is. I don't know about the whole fan base, but I mean, they have faith in Scott Frost and they want to give him time and they think things will be figured out. And it's a faith that I'm just not sure I have looking at it. I'm nervous about it. I'm like, Jake, I'm like you. To me, it's a desperation. We talked about it last year, the desperation. Yeah. He's got to do something else. I feel like he's –
That's why I think Whipple's such a great hire. Like, look at Pickett wasn't at the top of anybody's draft boards going in before that year, and then they took off. So you bring in Casey Thompson, who's got some talent. You add Whipple, who can take somebody from nothing and explode them in a year, to go with this Nebraska offense that was on the edge. A few turnovers don't go their way. Maybe those 1-score games flip a little bit. A defense that was very strong. I mean, they played Oklahoma to 1 score last year.
Yeah, they played them. They played everybody.
To 1 score. Yeah,
that was what they did.
I think this could be the year they step up and make some noise here.
Yeah, I think to sum up everything y'all just said, there's just pressure. Like there's pressure on these coaches every year when they come in, but this one seems like an exceptional case of pressure. And so are they going to rise to it or is it going to crush them? I have no idea, but there's just so much pressure on these new coaches, on Frost, on the new quarterback. There's just pressure on everybody all around.
Yep. All righty. So then we'll move on to the Pac-12 conference. Talked about them a little bit. I mean, a conference that it always feels like it's in shambles. It always feels like it's about to fall apart. You have the TV deal that's just been a disaster for them. You can't watch half the games. Now you got 2 teams leaving. I don't know how that's going to affect the conference this year other than, you might say that teams are going to play a little extra hard against USC and UCLA because they're going to be mad at them, that sort of thing. I mean, you have seen this a little bit in the Big 12 and some of these other conferences, these teams just like really angry at the teams leaving. But I kind of feel like teams already get up for USC and UCLA. So it's not like I think that's going to change too much. I think I'll be curious to see, is there a narrative around any of this going forward? Or when we get to the season, like I wonder, are we just going to forget about all this and just have the games and no one's going to care? I feel like it kind of might not really matter. And granted, I say that today, but there's obviously talk about the Pac-12 and the Big 12 merging or half the Pac-12 going there. So who knows what's going to happen with it. But it feels like, again, another down year for the conference. You have USC supposed to win it. Supposedly, a soft schedule and obviously bringing in a whole new team along with a new coaching staff. But I mean, beyond, USC will be decent. The question is, are they going to win 9 or 10 games, I guess? But beyond that, Oregon will probably be decent. But I mean, it really falls off quickly. It does seem like they are really trailing the other power conferences. It's a lot of wonky football late night if you could stay up and watch it, but I feel like that's really all it's got going for it is a 9 p.m. start on ESPN2.
Yeah.
What do you got for us here?
Yeah, so I'm excited about the Pac-12, not because I think there's any great teams there, but because it's like, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's like a common thing during the offseason for people to run down a list and say like top questions for every team. But the thing is, I can give you like legitimate things I'm interested in or questions I have about every Pac-12 team. So here we go. We will start at the top. We'll work our way.
He's actually going to do it.
Kind of north to south a little bit. It's not exactly perfect. I did Oregon before Washington. But anyway, Oregon, can Dan Lanning continue what Mario Cristobal started? Oregon State, the team that I love and get most upset when I can't watch their games on Pac-12 Network. Can they go to back-to-back bowl games for the first time in a decade? Washington.
Yeah, I have to interrupt you there. Oregon State, very fun team to watch. Lots of offense.
Yes.
No defense. The question for there, they can score. If they can keep scoring and then find any defense, I mean, that's not a bad team.
Yeah, and they do it by rushing for like 350 yards a game. It's not like they're airing it out like some of these other teams that are putting up a lot of points. They keep it on the ground. They run it really well. So Washington,
nice for them too. Get USC and Oregon at home.
You don't have to sell me on Oregon State. I'm a big Oregon State fan here. So Washington, how quickly can they put the Jimmy Lake era in the rearview mirror? That did not go as planned. Washington State, here's maybe a very interesting one. Can Washington State pull what Western Kentucky did last year at the Power 5 level, bringing in Cameron Ward from Incarnate Word, bringing in his offensive coordinator with him? Yeah, that'll be
an Incarnate Word team playing as Washington State.
Yeah. Hey, worked for Western Kentucky, so we'll see.
I feel like those are two different levels of competition, though. But what do I know? I mean, Western Kentucky was a good team, but
who knows? We'll see.
That was also a fun team to watch. We talked about them a lot last year. Western Kentucky was a blast to watch. Kind of if you could find them on your TV, you wanted to.
Yeah. So next one, Cal. This got completely lost in the craziness that was this college football offseason. Had a terrible ending to the year, didn't go to a bowl game, all of the COVID problems. And then Wilcox turns down Oregon to stay at Cal. Like, that was almost an emergency podcast situation. Like, what is he?
I feel like I completely missed that. Yeah, that's bizarre.
Yeah, it was really weird. So I don't know what's going on at Cal. They had brainwashed Justin Wilcox, apparently.
Good things, maybe, if he stayed.
Yeah, I don't know. Can Stanford get back to winning 8 or 9 games a season, or are they just like stuck in like 5 wins now? Yeah,
I can answer that one for you.
Yeah,
it's easy.
I agree with the professor there. Utah, can Utah go back to back? I think Jake's probably going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later.
A Utah team that we rode pretty hard at the end of the year last year. They were pretty profitable for us.
Not sure I can think of anybody that we rode harder. That was like, I came on here many times and I questioned the model. Yeah. And after about 3 times, I was like, I'm not questioning it. I'm just doing it. So
I think maybe Michigan State was longer ago.
Everybody too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Colorado. Okay, I'll be honest. I don't have any questions about Colorado. They're not going to be very good. UCLA, can Chip Kelly take the next step? USC, nothing's happened at USC. We don't need to talk about them at all.
No, it's just same old there.
So I'm going to talk about.
Hold on. We've been asking about can Chip Kelly take the next step for, I feel like 15 years now at UCLA, and I know that's not right. But it feels like it's been I can't even tell how many years, but I swear it's every year. Can Chip Kelly take the next step? Can he get him over the hump? And it's like, are we doing this again? Like, what year is this?
But and also, if your top receiver coming in is from Duke, I'm not sure that's the good recipe.
Doesn't sound.
I don't know. Duke's a powerhouse sports team, from what I understand.
Can he get to 9 or 10 wins? I don't know. But, I mean, listen to all of the teams that we just talked about. Is it impossible for him to not get to 9 wins?
It does, and it's a good question. And this is where, like, if you're betting the season bets, and we'll have – I should have mentioned at the top, we'll have 3 best bets for you here at the end of the episode. And if you're playing the season win totals – you got to be careful playing too many in the same conference because they start getting correlated, right? And that could work out well for you, but it could work out poorly for you. But I mean, you make a good point there. If you're playing other teams in the Pac-12 and you're playing UCLA, at some point it's like, well, someone has to win. And what's happened in the Pac-12, it's been interesting, and I wonder if it's going to happen again. And it feels like it will. I mean, the hope for the conference, I think, is that it won't. But what seems to happen is each team seems to somehow lose 3 games in conference or more, and they don't have that one team that can really run the table going if you just have one loss. And obviously they're hoping that USC or UCLA is able to do that. I mean, the hope for the Pac-12, aside from the fact that they're both leaving, the hope for them in a normal year would be USC and UCLA are both like, undefeated one-loss teams going into playing each other at the end of the season. And, that sets the stage for, a conversation about how they're in the playoff or whatever. But you talk about, UCLA and someone has to win or whatever, but I feel like they all just beat each other up somehow every year. And that, who knows if that'll continue, but that's been the thing for the Pac-12 in years past.
Yep. So I want to focus on the most important state in the Pac-12, which I'm going to say is Arizona, and 2 teams that I think are headed in completely opposite directions. So we'll start on the upswing here. Arizona, 1-11 last year, but for our purposes here, very important to distinguish, 6-6 against the spread last year. So a bad team, but still. I remember backing Arizona a couple times as like 28.5 point underdogs, and I remember 6-6 sounds about right. I feel like we backed them a lot because the model was just like, it's just too many points for a conference game, and won some, lost some. Sometimes they'd at least you kind of knew early, right? They'd hang in there and be up 7 in the second quarter, and you're like, well, they're going to lose, but they're going to cover, or they'd be down 30 in the second quarter, and you're like, well, this is not going to end well. Yeah. So they were playing hard in those games last year. Like I said, 6-6 against the spread, and their biggest problem though, inconsistency and injuries at the quarterback position. They started 3 different guys last year. None of them were particularly good. A lot of them were young. They've kind of, in my opinion, stabilized that position. They brought in Jaden DeLora, who came from Washington State last year, who Washington State, after Rolovich was let go, we thought was going to completely fall apart. And they did the exact opposite and completely came together and played much, much better than I thought they were going to. So I like the move of bringing him in.
And a quick reminder for you, that just because a team fires their coach doesn't necessarily mean they'll do well or not. We've seen cases of both, but that one was a success story of let go of the coach and then turns it around, right?
Definitely.
Incredible story there.
And they also took a big step forward in recruiting. So in 2019, they had the 56th ranked class. In 2020, they had the 58th. In 2020, they bottomed out at 76th ranked recruiting class. And that was when someone was let go. And then this past year, they bumped up to 25th. So they brought in a lot of talented freshmen there that could probably going to get a lot of playing time on a team like this. Yeah. But the problem here is that you may not see this payoff in their record. You see their only 2.5 wins is their total. And they got the Pac-12 schedule. But then in non-conference, they have San Diego State, Mississippi State.
San Diego State on the road.
Yeah. On the road. Mississippi State at home. And in the what are you thinking category, North Dakota State.
Horrible decision.
Why would you schedule North Dakota State if you're Arizona?
We can have North State paying them this time, like how it normally goes. A little extra money. I don't know.
We can have a whole podcast on the history of dumb FBS schools playing North Dakota State. If you're gonna play, Look, I want schools to play North Dakota State, but look, if you're going to play North Dakota State, you should not be a bad team. You should be a good team, and you should go beat them. And you're not going to beat them by 50 because they're not that bad. But if you're you're going to win 9 games type team, go play North Dakota State. They're going to give you a little run for your money. You might win by 20. Might win by 14. That's how you want to do it. And North Dakota State will feel great for hanging in there against a really good team. But these teams like Arizona, we've seen it. Kansas State's done it. Iowa State's done it. I think Iowa did it one year. These teams that when they're, maybe struggling a little bit, not having great years, playing North Dakota State, it's like they come in there and beat you. Why would you do this?
This was very poor decision making is what I would say. So is this team going to win more games? I'll be honest with you. If I'm looking at that 2.5, I think that's close. I mean, obviously
with the juice,
minus
150 to the over.
That would be tough. To me, take the over there. But I think the team's going to be improved, and that's the point that I'm trying to make. There could be value over the course of the season on this team. Now on the flip side.
So hold on. Before we move on, I want to make an interesting point here because this is the interesting about season betting, and you don't see this in baseball season betting. You don't see it in basketball. You don't see it in hockey, but you see it in football, whether it's NFL or college, where the expected win total is derived by taking the probability that you win each game and then adding those up. I mean, that's just a simple way to do it. That's the way everybody does this. That's how the books do, right? So sometimes you end up with a schedule that lines up and it's like there's these 2 coin toss games. Like you're just thinking through it. These 2 coin toss games, and it's like, well, they're going to win one of the 2. We'll say it's obviously not that simple, but you just give them one of the 2 wins. And there's these handful of games they're definitely going to win, and these handful of games they're definitely going to lose, and it works out really easy. But Arizona's 2.5 wins implied maybe 2.7, 2.8 with that juice. There's not how many games are they going to be favored in this whole season?
Maybe
I mean,
Colorado, maybe because it's
maybe home against Colorado. Maybe home against Washington State if they're really rolling, but I wouldn't think so either. Maybe North Dakota State because it's kind of hard to assess. But I mean, if you could be plus odds with North Dakota State on the money line, I take it. Mm-hmm. And right now, I mean, who knows when we get there, right? How those teams will look. But I mean, just knowing what we know about North Dakota State, like there's a chance they might not be favored in a single game all season.
Yeah.
So what's happening is it's kind of like, well, you get 0.3 wins here, 0.2 wins here, 0.4 wins there. It's not that they think they're going to win any single game, because the most likely scenario out of all this is they go 0-12. But if they hang in there in enough games, especially a couple of those home games, like they have a chance to pull off a couple wins. But I'm like you. I feel like if it was me, I'd go under this 2.5 and just say they're probably going to win a game or 2, but like it's the juice. I mean, it's hard to go over 2.5, laying minus 150. I'd rather have
with this schedule.
With this schedule, I'd rather just have the plus 120 and be like, they're going to accidentally win a game, and that's okay. No sweat. They're going to accidentally win 2, no sweat. Yeah. Are they going to accidentally win 3? Like, I'm with you. They're going to be improved, and they have a quarterback at the end of the year. They had no quarterbacks, but
that's the thing. You're saying accidentally win. Like there's no game on their schedule that you're like, yep, there's one. I'll put one in there too.
Right. That's what you want on these low numbers like this. On these low numbers, we got like Kansas is what we always talk about with this number. It's always got a really low number, but they're always playing like Southwest East Missouri Tech, and you're like, okay, well, there's one. Yeah. And then it's like, where can we find another one? It's like, they don't have one. All right, carry on.
So that was the positive conversation about Arizona. So let's go.
Wait, hold on. That was the positive one.
That was the positive one. I think Arizona's on the upswing. That doesn't have anything doesn't matter what the total is.
That's true.
But Arizona State. Where to start with Arizona State? So you know how most preseason articles like to focus on the positive and like to envision how teams can be the best version of themselves.
Every team had their best offseason. Everyone's in the greatest shape of their lives,
et cetera, et cetera. We all know
everyone's always in the weight room.
Yeah, exactly. So added pounds of muscle. Personally, that's what I'm going for.
Yeah. So took all the tough classes in the spring. So now they're taking cupcake making 101.
There you go. So the headline for the Athletics their season preview for Arizona State was Arizona State football seems headed in the wrong direction. So I mean,
right off the bat,
there's not really any way to sugarcoat it. Ironic that you mentioned taking cupcake making 101. So the first thing is, and the number one thing that's kind of looming over all of this, is the NCAA investigation into recruiting violations at Arizona State, which, let's be honest, if the NCAA at this point felt that you did something blatantly wrong enough to investigate you, it was pretty bad. Because, I mean, what's the NCAA really doing anymore, if we're being completely honest?
I don't think anyone knows the answer to that question.
No. You're right. I don't. Jake, you're close to the source there. Any information you have?
Just the fact that they order a lot of pizza in. They don't go out a lot. I assume that they are working hard and not at all updating resumes and searching for jobs. Not
there you go. Okay, yeah. Okay, so for those who don't know, Jake is in Indianapolis. Jake is in Indianapolis, so he's close to the source there at the NCAA. So, wow, this is a great podcast, guys. This is great content. Okay, so that investigation has led to 5 assistant coaches leaving in the past year. And then there's the transfer portal. I didn't really feel like we even mentioned the transfer portal, because if you're watching this, you probably know that the portal is crazy, right? All the teams are turning over at these unbelievable rates. Arizona State was hit especially hard. And to me, this kind of indicates that a lot of the players there probably knew that they were going to be in for like a tough couple of seasons. Not necessarily they're going to be sanctions and everything, but just they kind of saw the culture of the program and felt like, hey, it may be cool if we get out. Because it wasn't like, your second and third string guys who weren't playing were getting to leave. It was like all the starters were like, hey, I'm gone to start somewhere else. So if you look at returning production, they have almost nothing returning on offense and only about half of their production returning on defense. And the thing is that probably the biggest thing that you could say about them under the Herm Edwards era is that they have been really undisciplined. And all of this instability, I don't think is going to help with that discipline thing. They were 128th nationally in penalty yards last year. And now you're turning over the entire team and expecting that to change. And I just don't see that working out well for them. So, we can bring up the schedule here. And if I'm just looking at like teams that I feel confident that they can beat, okay, they can beat Northern Arizona. They're playing them the first game of the season. They can beat Eastern Michigan. They're playing
week two's at Oklahoma State. That's a no.
That's a loss. Potentially beat Eastern Michigan, and then back to back Utah and USC. I think they're going to lose to Utah.
It's 2 losses there.
Yeah, and then USC.
At USC.
And so, Jake, I think you made the perfect point. In my opinion, it's just a matter of time until the wheels fall off. Is that going to be after like week 2 at Oklahoma State? Is that going to be after week 5 at USC? I don't know, but I think it's going to be before.
I will say this: if they get to after 5 weeks and they're 2-3 like we think, home against Washington is going to make or break their season. Because if they lose that game, start 0-3 in conference, now 2-4 for the season, that's going to be. It feels like it's all over at that point.
Yeah. But
you got to look at how demoralizing I think the Utah USC wins are going to be, or like losses are going to be. I don't think that they're going to sniff that game, either one of those. And I think that's just – and I think Washington ends up getting a loss because the players have given up at that point, but during the season.
And down the stretch, the last 4 games, UCLA at home, playing at Washington State, Oregon State at home, and then at Arizona. Yeah. I feel pretty confident saying you're going to get the best shot from those 4 teams. So it's not going to be, you're not going to be playing anybody. I think it's going to be limping home.
Because Washington State and Oregon State very likely are playing for a bowl berth, trying to get to 6 wins at that point. Maybe not, but if not, it's more likely they've already got to 6, and now that means they're good or decent, right? They're not bad. I'm kind of like you got at Stanford, at Colorado in the middle of the season, and get those 2. Maybe they can get Arizona, Northern Arizona, Eastern Michigan. There's 5. I don't know how you get to 6. And if they accidentally lose one of those games, which is very possible, then it's almost going to be impossible just to get to 6 wins.
Yeah. So that's really all I got at Arizona State. It's just a bad situation, and I don't see the wheel staying on for the entire season. I think they're going to come off at some point. And if they don't, then, hand on heart, great coaching job by Herm Edwards, because there is nothing positive going on right now. And so I will admit, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to run with the Herm Edwards thing right there. Wasn't Herm Edwards the guy, they brought him in and it was just like, we're going to be a business and we're going to run this like the NFL, and like that went horribly. And like you said, they were like basically last in penalties. Like it feels like he's going to have to coach them to overperform and do well. And I feel like we have zero evidence of that happening over the last 3-4 years he's been there, right? It feels like it's a lot of faith in a guy who's shown he absolutely cannot do what he needs to do there. And to your point, talking about the transfer portal, if I remember correctly, wasn't Caleb Williams tied to Arizona State? Wasn't he? I feel like he was like potentially going to go there. He had a friend there who was like trying to talk him into going there or whatever. But I feel like I read somewhere that Herm Edwards said they didn't want him because they were happy with their quarterback situation. I feel like I read that story, and it was like, and I think that's why then a bunch of other people transferred, because they were like, what is this guy doing? And I feel like that's how that played out.
Yeah.
It just goes to show just that they don't know what the heck they're doing there.
It would definitely make sense with how the program's been going.
Well, Herm Edwards should be fired with cause if that were the case, but that's neither here nor there.
I feel like I read that. I'm gonna Jake, you're gonna talk about Utah. I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna look this up. I swear that I'm not making this up. If I'm making this up, we're gonna edit this out. No one's ever gonna see it. So there you go. Jake, you want to talk about Utah real quick? I see what because Jared and I already talked about. We loved last year.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Look, I love this Utah team. They're bringing their quarterback back, and that was Rising is just incredible. I think he's going to be super talked about, like a long shot for a Heisman, I know right now. But if the season goes the way I think it will, he'll be up there towards, like, I don't think he's going to get the invite to New York, but he's going to be in the conversation. And then the running back Thomas is going to be big too. Bringing him back, they did lose their top receiver, but he was only second in catches. And their tight ends that they both bring back are first and third. So he's not losing a lot of production of who he's throwing to. They open at Florida, which is strange, but I think there's a lot of upheaval in Florida with the whole – we'll probably get into this SEC thing, but fans aren't exactly happy with the new hire already. And he's been there for, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months. But they get USC at home. They have to travel to Oregon and Washington State, but the Oregon game, that could really be deciding who's winning this conference.
Didn't they kick the crap out of Oregon twice last year?
Yeah, and so Oregon's going to be mad, but it's a new coach, and they correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe their running back transferred to UCLA. They're the top running back Oregon had, but
transferred to USC. Yeah,
USC. Sorry, I knew it was a California school
because nothing happened to USC. They don't have any new players.
We don't need to talk about them.
Well, yeah. So that's where I was going. The next point is they get USC early enough that I don't think all the transfer pieces, their free agents that they picked up, are going to be working together yet. So the fact that it's early and not late in the year, I think it makes a big difference.
In a tough place to play. So about that game being in Utah, a really tough place to play.
Yep.
With the travel, the altitude, the fans, a good Utah team, I feel like you kind of just chalk up, be like, yeah, they're just going to run the table at home. You're not going to go in there and beat them. It's kind of how it feels,
Yeah, I mean, I think they've got a good shot at the playoffs the way it's going to be, because USC, good or not, everybody's going to be voting them up because they read good. They're good on paper. Oregon's a good team, so if they can get those 2 wins and win the conference, they've got a shot at the playoffs. I think this Utah team is really one of the top ones here, and I would be really surprised if they don't go over this number here.
Yeah, the number's 9. You have to lay a little bit of a juice there. But I'm always saying about other sports, you have that push protection there. If they should be able to get to 9, they may not get to 10, but either way, 9 or 10, either a push or a win is a solid investment. I'm like you. I like Utah. It's interesting you talk about, and we kind of talked about this at the start, so we'll kind of wrap up where we started here with, which is, Utah, Oregon, USC, maybe UCLA, all set up to be this. Can they all have one loss going into the conference title game, make a shot at the playoff, and every year it seems like all of them end up with 3 losses somehow?
Yep.
I mean, the blueprint's there for them. Some of the teams are bad. They just got to stop losing inexplicable games that they seem to do every year. And some of you are already who have listened to this know what I'm talking about. It wasn't Caleb Williams. It was Spencer Rattler. It was a wrong Oklahoma quarterback, but that story did happen.
There we go. Okay.
And to be fair, can you keep the Oklahoma quarterbacks straight? They're transferring from everywhere. They come in, they win Heisman's, they leave. I cannot keep these guys straight. I'm a Baylor fan. I'm in the Big 12 Conference, play them every year, and I cannot keep these guys straight, especially last year changing quarterbacks midseason. It was just chaos, right? So which one was which, I don't know. Does it even matter, right? But the story was that the Sun Devils declined interest, that Rattler was interested in going to Arizona State, but the Sun Devils declined due to their commitment to Jaden Daniels. And Daniels was a good quarterback.
But didn't he leave?
He went to LSU.
He left.
Yeah.
Then he left. And so it just goes to show what I was saying about Herm Edwards and that program. I don't know what's happening there, but it's not good things.
Nope.
That's whether it's communication with the players, understanding what's happening, and I understand the transfer portal thing, and you can't always show your cards, and everyone's going to make the best decision for them. I totally get that, respect that. But it's there's got to be this level of communication that you've got to have if your players respect you, to kind of talk about those things so that they could have worked out something and could have made the situation work for everybody. When he wanted to come, Rattler would be better than whoever they're having now, because they've lost their quarterback, who was the best player on that team last year. I mean, right. He was the highlight reel for him. So that's the Pac-12. On to the Mountain West. We'll stick out west. We'll cover in brief some of these smaller conferences here at the end of these shows. A fun conference that was really complicated to watch because you just never knew what was going to happen with half of these teams. Every time it seemed like you thought you'd figured it out, someone zigged and zagged, but a lot of good teams at the top, a lot of good defensive football. San Diego State, played long, slow, and boring games. It seems like
their basketball team.
Like their basketball team. Yeah, it's something in the water there down in San Diego. But you had a Utah State who really overperformed. last season, and the question is, can they do that again? Boise State's always solid. You got a team like Fresno State, who had a down year at some point recently, I feel like, but for the most part, it's been a good team. So a pretty good conference here. A lot of fun games. I know, because Jared, I know you talked about last year, just wanting to have a Mountain West After Dark segment, to talk about these games. There's a lot of fun games.
Yeah. I love the Mountain West. I would even venture to say that I irrationally love the Mountain West.
Yeah, I think it's accurate.
I wanted a Mountain West corner on this podcast.
There you go. That's what it was. Mountain West corner. There you go.
I haven't been able to make that happen yet, but don't worry, my friends. I've got takes on a lot of the teams here in the Mountain West. Don't worry. Right. I'm not going to run through all of them here. I'm just going to run through
hey, before we get this, we do have to share at the beginning of this, before we went on, I should have recorded it. I should have recorded everything. We could have had it as like a cold open take. We played the game of can I, the professor, name all 12 schools in the Mountain West? Because I was like, I'm not sure how long it would take me to get all of them. I don't know how long. I think it took me like 3-4 minutes. I struggled with a couple of them.
Yeah.
So that's our Mountain West coverage here. Is just, can you name it? Just stop right now, pause it, and see how long it takes you to name all of them. Some of you are going to rattle them off in 30 seconds, but those last couple are kind of like, you kind of forget about a couple of these schools.
Yeah. Don't worry. I may hit on a couple of them right here. So let's see if I can give you a hand here as you're going through your mental list. So Hawaii, going to be a long season on the island, friends. Probably not going to talk about any island specials this year unless.
Could it be an island special if we fade them? Does that count?
I was going to say, unless I'm just laying some God forbidden number when some team's playing out there. It's going to be a long season on the island.
At least they have the beaches.
They have the beaches, and they've got Timmy Chang, my friend, and he is going to come in. Exactly, you got Timmy Chang, FBS all-time passing leader for a while, and then he got passed, but he's very good. Anyway, I'm going to get off topic here. San Jose State. They actually got Hawaii's quarterback, and I think that's going to stabilize the position there. I was riding the San Jose State unders.
Which quarterback did they get? Because Hawaii had two they were playing.
Chevin Cordero. The guy that went to San Jose State.
You watch a lot of Hawaii just staying up late because they're the only ones playing at like midnight.
Yeah. So
Cordero,
I think
Cordero was very hot and cold. He had some really great moments, but man, he could fall apart quickly. But in the Mountain West, I mean, that's not. You don't have the same standard. It's not. It's not. It's acceptable. He's gonna be decent enough. He can make some throws. They just got to figure out how to minimize his mistakes.
Yeah, and Starkle didn't play great last year for San Jose State, so I think
Cordero's going to be bad. Shockingly bad.
So I think Cordero's going to be an upgrade there. San Diego State. I mean, the same thing that you say every year about San Diego State. They're going to have a great defense. Yeah. Are they going to be able to score?
Basketball or football doesn't matter.
Yeah. So the same question there.
Similar scoring games.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. Of course, that may be a game that we play once college basketball season starts. What college football teams look exactly like their college basketball team?
There you go.
San Diego State is definitely number one on that list.
Yeah.
I'm making content here as we go. Fresno State.
I can tell you Kansas is not on that list. They do not. They're number 130, right?
Yeah. Them and Duke neck and neck.
Yeah.
So I think Jake's going to touch on them later, but Fresno State, I have faith in Jeff Tedford. I have faith in Jake Haener. I would be surprised if they don't win the West. Colorado State, newly not inept Colorado State. Jay Norvell is going to be a huge upgrade for that team. And we will just ignore whatever ended up happening to Steve Adazio. We don't have to talk about where he's at right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you watch the shows last year, Cousin Jared was on this Colorado State coaching train wreck show. He highlighted it really early last year, and it made us some profit, that's for sure.
Yes, it did make us some profit, and at some point the professor will throw it back in my face where Steve Adazio ended up. Yep. So Air Force,
plenty of time for it.
Air Force is going to Air Force. They're going to be a problem for multiple teams. This year.
We're 15 starters. I mean, that's the same team.
Got a ton of production coming back, and
they're going to inexplicably get crushed in a game where they just can't get things going, and everyone's going to be really confused. And they're going to also win a couple games that you're shocked they're going to win, or hang in there in games because they can just really confuse the other team. I mean,
exactly. So I think Air Force is going to be solid as always. The two teams that I'm really looking at here, the first one is Utah State. Now, Utah State was really good to us here at the end of last season. They got hot and they thumped some really good teams in their last two games. And I definitely trust Blake Anderson more than just about any coach in the Mountain West, I think. from the time he was at Arkansas State and now his time at Utah State, he has just really never had a bad team. His teams are just consistently really good. And I think I trust Logan Bonner at quarterback more than any other quarterback except probably Jake Haener in the entire Mountain West. So in the Mountain West, if you've got a good coach and you've got a good quarterback, I think that's going to set you up. Yeah, that's going to set you up for a lot of success. And just an additional nugget, because, for a while there, ironic that Anderson went from Arkansas State to Utah State, because Arkansas State for a long time had that revolving door at head coach. They had all the good head coaches come through 1 year and done. Utah State kind of went through a similar thing where a lot of good coaches there at Utah State would go on to take bigger jobs. This is going to be the first time in 5 years that Utah State has returned both of their coordinators. There has been a lot of instability there, but with Blake Anderson and having those two same coordinators for the first time in 5 years, I think that's going to bode well for them in this conference. And this is going to be a perfect transition. I think another thing that is setting Utah State up for success is that, and you have to ask yourself this every year as you talked about the Mountain West, but is Boise State really going to be good? So
I never know the answer to that question. Every year they befuddle me.
And I feel like you got to put some context around it. Like, they're going to be solid. It's not like they're going to be bad.
Sure. It's not. We're not questioning if they're going to win 4 games, right?
Yeah.
It's are they going to win 8 or are they going to win 11?
Exactly. And I don't know the answer to that question. So am I telling you to bet the under on Boise State here? No, I'm not telling you to bet the under 9 on Boise State. But I think I am cautioning you against betting the over 9 on Boise State because I really don't know what to do here. And, we've talked about schedules a little bit here. Mm-hmm. Boise State has to play both Fresno State and San Diego State from the West. And so completely terrible draw.
The top two off the West.
Yeah.
And in non-conference, they have to go to at UTEP, who is respectably decent now and probably going to be a tougher place to play at.
And they host BYU, right? And that's not a walkthrough.
They host BYU, and they have to play at Oregon State in
September 3rd at 10:30 Eastern, baby. I will be tuned in to ESPN.
Yes, that's gonna be a great one for week 1.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean they've got some tough games. I mean they've got some easily winnable games. Obviously, they're gonna be UT Martin, and they're gonna be Colorado State. But I mean they got a lot of losable games here. At Air Force, like that's not a gimme.
Yeah, in my mind, they've got 6 toss-up games. So
they got a lot of toss-up games.
So to me, this line feels right. They win 50% of those toss-up games. You end up at 9. So this line feels right, but I would not feel great going over this line,
especially with the juice, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so the last thing I want to leave you with here is, since the Mountain West went to divisions in 2013, so 10 years, Boise State's only won their division 3 times in the past 10 years.
That seems shocking.
Yeah,
I feel like we're just so used to Boise State being the talk of their conference, and
they are, and they only won the 7 games last year. The thing is with that, every year they go to the conference championship game, they win it. Like if they go, they win, and so that's part of what sticks in our minds as well. Right. Anyway, just all of this put together, and looking at the schedule, I just don't have a warm and fuzzy feeling about Boise State this year. They could be good, but I'm not sold on it.
Yeah, I really don't like how their O-line looks right now. So they don't. It just looks rough. They lost their top receiver, and the gap between the top receiver and the second guy was huge. Something like 700 less yards and 43 less catches. That's asking a lot of a guy that seemed to barely be on the field.
I would say 100% of my questions about Boise State revolve around their offense.
Because their defense was pretty solid last year.
And they bring back 8 guys, so I mean, it shouldn't be hard to find 3 guys at the same level.
Yeah. Jake, you want to talk about Fresno State?
Yeah. This team, I think they walked through the West of the Mountain West. They're really, really good, and Jared's pointed out their quarterback is outstanding. Their coach, this is a weird statement to kind of make, but if he stays healthy, they're going to be really good.
Sorry.
Like I said, it's a weird statement, right? So he won the Pac-12 early in his year, just to kind of show his resume. He won Pac-12 Coach of the Year twice at California. Very, very good. Went to the NFL, didn't work out. Came back, went to Fresno State, where he won 10 games in his first year, 12, and won the championship. Then the next year, the third year wasn't good. Then he retired after that for medical reasons, and now he's back. Right, so if he's healthy, he's a very good coach, and they're going to be good. If not, you don't really know what you're going to get. But I think the West part of the Mountain West is rather weak comparatively. So I think if they can get by San Diego State, they're going to walk through everybody else, and they're going to be really ready to go in the championship. And then Utah State, Air Force, and Boise are going to beat up on each other. So I think that's going to be maybe set them up, Fresno up as a flyer to win that conference.
Yeah, their tough thing, and the reason that their total's down at 8.5 and not higher is they have to go to USC, which, anything can happen, but probably not likely to win that game. They get Oregon State at home. I think Oregon State made them move to the Mountain West, and we didn't know that. Right? The Pac-12 happens. Yeah, exactly. They do get two kind of gimmies in Cal Poly and UConn, but then they, like you said, they go at Boise State, and then they get San Diego State at least at home. But I mean, they've got like 4 tougher games, and they got to win one of those. If it wasn't for that tough schedule, like you said, I think they're talented enough that their win total will be 9.5 in a non-Power 5 conference. But yeah, that's the question: is can they win one of those 4 and then take care of business in the rest? They probably take care of business everywhere else. I mean, the rest of the schedule is San Diego State, New Mexico, Hawaii, UNLV, Nevada, Wyoming. It's not really overly scary. It's just, can they get either Oregon State at Boise State versus San Diego State? Just got to win one of those 3, and you got the over, right?
Yep. Yeah,
and not do anything stupid in the other games.
Yeah. Do what you're supposed to do, and then grab one you should not.
Yep, exactly. I think that's all we've got here. That's 3 conferences down. That means we have 7 to go. All right, Jake, we'll start off with you. What is your best bet?
My best bet, and we've kind of talked about it throughout the show, I like Utah over 9. I don't see a way they don't get to that number, and I think they get over it fairly easy, but I don't see a way you lose your money there.
All right, Cousin Jared.
My favorite, I'm going to go Utah State over 7, kind of like what I said. I trust Blake Anderson more than any coach in the Mountain West. I trust Logan Bonner just about more than anybody except Jake Haener. And if you look at their schedule, they're not playing Fresno State, and they're not playing San Diego State from the West. So that helps their season win total, in my opinion. They do have to play at Alabama. So rest in peace, Utah State, that week.
Don't get hurt.
Don't get hurt. Yeah. But other than that, their conference schedule sets up really nice. So I got hot at the end of last season. They check every box that you want coming into the season. I don't know why this is 7. So I got the Utah State over 7 wins.
And they'll lose to Alabama, but they can still lose 3 other games and still cash this over.
Yep.
I'll take Arizona State under 6. I trust that that Arizona State situation's a hot mess. I'll trust that Herm Edwards has no idea what he's doing, and I'll trust that this number is at least 1 win too high because people are not realizing just how much talent has left that program.
Yep.
Any parting words?
We'll be back tomorrow.
We'll be back tomorrow. All right. Well, that does us. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Picks with the Professor. Again, we've got the Google Sheet out for baseball results right now, and we'll have one up for college football season when it gets here. We'll track these season-long bets as well. You can find everything we've got at the website, www.pickswiththeprofessor.com. And if you haven't done so yet, please click that subscribe button to ensure all the sports betting content we provide on this channel is dropped right into your feed. We will see you again tomorrow for more college football previews. And until then, remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.